For me, the luminescent properties of a watch are one of those things where I don't really think they matter until, of course, they really matter. On a YouTube rabbit hole the other day, I spent an hour and a half watching a documentary about caving disasters. That fear of being stuck, alone, and in the dark is certainly a palpable one. And when I am out in the dark, catching sight of Lume on my watch is just something that puts me at ease a little, and occasionally outright impresses me. So, this week I wanted to look at luminescence as if it were the main deciding factor in a watch purchase. If you wanted to have the brightest, longest lasting, or most interesting lume possible for exploration, for a practical application like work, or just because you think it's a cool feature, what should you go out and buy? Now, I will just say that while that is the primary parameter for the video, it isn't my only one. I'm not just going to feature a watch on the channel because it's bright at night. I must also respect it as a model that I would happily recommend a viewer to purchase. I followed some very simple rules for this video. First of all, the luminescence must be purely material and not battery powered. Standard lume is fine, tritium is fine, but no backlighting. Secondly, each watch featured must be available for less than $1,000. And finally, for the sake of variety, each brand can only feature once on the list. With all that said, let's get into the video. At the budget end of the list, you might, quite fairly, expect that lume would be an area that is often overlooked. Not so with this homage to the Squale 50 Atmos. This actually features two different types of lume, with BGW9 on the bezel and C3 LUMINOVA on the dial. Not only does this provide excellent visibility in the dark, but the contrasting colours are also important to the use case of the watch. If you were diving in dark waters, being able to quickly differentiate between the bezel and dial is a useful asset when it comes to actually operating the dive functionality of the watch. If REVOLUT have a reputation for anything as a watch brand, it is for their use of lume. The only reason I really know of the brand's existence is from their showing on Jodie's Lume Wars series a few years ago. While not champions there, they had a solid showing. When you take the budget into account, it's pretty impressive. This full lume dial variant of their Seiko VK63 powered chronograph is impressive not only for its properties in the dark, but also just its looks. The inspiration for the piece is pretty obvious. I'm not claiming its original design, but the use of colour and detailing on the subdials really elevates this above its competitors in the homage space. Deep Blue are a company that produce tool watches specifically aimed at actual divers and military personnel. They use Super LUMINOVA, but it's quite hard to find more detailed information as the brand isn't exactly high profile. But I think it's fair to say from the imagery on show that they are not messing about when it comes to lume. The Pro C diver is also rated to 1,000 meters of water resistance, and this is an attribute that the company takes pride in testing and showing off. If you're looking for a serious piece of kit to dive with, where the lume might be an actual lifesaver, this is the option. There are a number of US watch brands that are probably far more prominent stateside than they are overseas. RZE are definitely one of those, and I've always been intrigued by their futuristic designs and use of titanium as their primary material, but they end up being prohibitively more expensive to get hold of in the UK than their initial price tag indicates, unfortunately. Having said all that, I still highly rate the design language of the brand, and this 38mm full lume dial field piece with a tiny lug-to-lug of 45mm is simply too nice not to feature on the list. Orient, being a subsidiary brand of Seiko at this point, makes use of their proprietary luminescent material, known as Lumibrite. In truth, it isn't quite as strong as its main competition, C3 Super Luminova. However, the design of the KAMASU goes a long way to counteract that. What sets this model apart from its rivals in terms of lume is the amount of surface area that it's applied to. The KAMASU features a chunky handset and sizable indices. As a result, it's often mentioned as the budget lume champion, though on that front, they are actually quite a challenge to find in UK retailers, and Orient themselves don't market the model in the UK or in other territories on their official pages. This model is one of the cheapest, but also in my opinion, best offerings in the current PRX lineup. A few reasons for that. First of all, the rubber strap. To me, the PRX sits a little proud on wrist on the bracelet, and that isn't an issue here. This also makes the piece a little more affordable, and if you really wanted to fully embrace the idea with the watch, you could go for a custom glow-in-the-dark strap to match, though that is a fairly expensive custom-made extra. The main selling point though is of course the full lume dial, which is blue tinted, and while not the highest grade of Super Luminova, has so much surface area to it, it can't help but impress when the lights go out. I have to say that I paid a lot less than this for my GPQ, but discount prices in the UK for watches that aren't already on these shores are becoming harder and harder to come by. There are two versions of the GPQ, and the version I'm discussing here features tritium tubes. These aren't going to win any awards for the strength of light they emit, but that isn't the point. Apologies for the science lesson, but one is needed to explain how it works. Tritium is a radioactive isotope of hydrogen that emits electrons. If those electrons interact with a phosphor material, they emit light. This process is actually known as radioluminescence. The reason this makes for good lume is that it doesn't require a charge from a light source, meaning that if you do live in a dark area, you can rely on this even if your watch hasn't seen a light in a long time. I've never done this before on one of my list videos, but on this occasion I feel it's justified. I'm breaking my own one watch per brand rule and effectively just saying any of the full lume models from Signum, whether that be the CUDA in steel or titanium, the GMT version, or the full lume variant of the Siege. They are all such good options, and mostly variations on the same model. I think honing in on one would do the brand a little bit of a disservice. Dial variety is Signum's unique selling point, and lume is a key part of that strategy, with their models being widely recognised as some of the brightest in the business. One innovation I really like, that I've not seen anywhere else, is the combination of different lume colours used on a single piece to create a distinctive pattern both with and without the light. Like the previous Signum, I was highly tempted to just say any Luminox model, the hint is in the name, because they have their own LLT, Luminox Light Technology System, which involves the use of borosilicate glass capsules filled with, and don't quote me on this because they don't specifically say it, tritium. These capsules are smaller than most tritium tubes, and Luminox also colours them, mostly green and orange, as these are colours in the middle of the colour spectrum that are easiest to see. I've picked out a model from their blackout range, essentially every model has an all black variant, because I think the Lume is a really cool party piece that you won't expect from a stealthy looking watch such as this. When I first left university, I worked for a couple of months as a graphic designer for a company that made glow-in-the-dark signs, and I absolutely hated every second of it. But I learned then that when it comes to luminescent material, the grade that you buy makes a big difference. I'm featuring the C63 not only because it's a beautiful 39mm Swiss-made Sellita-powered Explorer style watch, but also because it has grade XL BL C1 Super Luminova generously applied to the hands and indices. Videos and images don't really do this justice, so let's just say that the difference in material is both noticeable and impressive. So there we have it, 10 watches that I consider to be the best Lume options below $1,000. I'm sure you can see, but I've gone for variety rather than simply featuring models with the very strongest luminescent properties. While of course experiences may vary, I actually think the geography of where you live is a big factor in terms of how useful Lume is to you. If you live towards either of the poles and spend months in darkness, it's clearly going to be an asset. Equally, if you live in a country where for most of the year it's so hot that a lot of daily life takes place at night, again, it's potentially more beneficial. Then again, you might simply work the night shift. Let's discuss your thoughts on my list in the comments section below. Are there other models you think I should have featured? Do you have any stories regarding a watch and its Lume? I'd be particularly keen to hear stories where the Lume has proven genuinely useful and gotten you out of a scrape or two. As ever, thank you for your time. If you've enjoyed what you've seen, consider dropping the video a like and subscribing for more content like this in future.